How are we this morning? So we're holding the second page of the Mimer, the second paragraph. We were going through the different levushim of the kohen that was made out of bad, and it says 4 times bad by each one of them, and we were explaining the reason for that, and we got into explaining all the different levushim. We're holding now by the third levush. We spoke about the mitznefes having to do with keser, the way it comes down to chachma. We spoke about the avnate, the gartel. That's the way it comes, the revelation, as opposed to keser and the chachma of the head covering. There is a level of the midas coming down into the heart, which is what the gartel is about. But over there, the midas come down into the revealed way. It's not concealed. Now we're going to talk about the tunic, the shirt, the kisoinus. Second paragraph on the second page. The idea of the kisoinus is l'chaper al oven shvichas dam, is to atone for the sin of killing, of murder. Why is that so? The kisoinus shayach la kisoinus pasim shetavli badam. The kisoinus is connected with. It reminds us of the other time when it says in the Torah the word kisoinus, which was when the brothers took the special tunic that Yaakov gave to Yosef, and they dipped it into blood to show Yaakov Avinu that Yosef was killed by an animal. So this is all related to the spilling of blood. They actually put it into blood. So we see the connection between the kisoinus and spilling of blood. The inyan shvichas damim, what's the spiritual concept of shvichas damim, of spilling blood, like it says in the pasuk, shoifech dam ha'adam ba'adam gomer, that the one who spills the blood of man in man. What does that mean? Or through man? Even that is a little bit strange expression. Like he's going to bring down what the Arizal says on it. Because for Arizal and the writings of the Arizal, he examines this and analyzes this. What's this type of Adam bi Adam, the Adam Asheni Umiyutar? The extra, the second time where it says Adam is extra. It sure just said, should just said one who spills the blood of a person, and that's it. It stopped right over there. And he explains the intention of this pasuk is Allah inyan the shofar dam adam the kedusha beha adam the blial adam the lu'umazem. Just like down here there's the level of adam, so to lamayla there's adam ha'elyon. And just like in kedusha there's adam elyon, so too in the worlds of klippa there's adam blial. So there's the negative. So what is a person that spills blood spiritually? He takes the blood of Adam, of Kedusha, and he spills it into Klippa. As we also have this concept of V'noikiv Shem Havaya. The person literally means, he, in the simple sense of the text, it means that he curses. But V'noikiv, Chassidus explains, Kabbalah explains, from the word he punctures, which means that the energy and the life force that's in the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei through an Aveda pours out, like blood pours out of a wound, and it pours into Klippa. That's also the idea that the Shasal Loisasa is about the Gidim, about the blood vessels, meaning that what's the job of the blood vessel? To keep blood flowing where it's supposed to be going. If chas v'sholem, a person doesn't fulfill those mitzvahs, so then the blood exits those blood vessels, chas v'sholem. So the Rebbe continues in the middle of the paragraph, in addition to the idea of that you need to have atonement because you did something wrong. There's another issue. You took life force of Kedusha and you embedded it into Klippa. That needs to be undone. There has to be, like where it says that wealth or strength he had swallowed up, but now he needs to vomit it again. He needs to remove that energy that was now embedded in Klippa. It has to be removed and sent back, if you will, to its source. The person, in addition to getting atonement for what he did wrong, he has to repair it as well. The repairing of it is to extract the sparks of holiness, this divine energy, this blood of the Adam of Kedusha, and we need to extract it from the Adam of Klippa. Through a person extracting those sparks that he brought down into Klippa, and afterwards it becomes like it says, Asher sholat ha'adam ba'adam l'raloi, that the person rules over the person for the detriment of that original person. In other words, that when the Klippa took out sparks of Kedusha through the spilling of the blood, ultimately it was for Klippa's detriment. Why was it for Klippa's detriment? Because not only through tshuva is the person going to extract that energy and that blood life force that he invested into, and those sparks of holiness that he invested into Klippa, but while doing that, he is also going to extract other sparks over there. He extracts the sparks of holiness that were there prior to it. So that's what it means that that you think that the Adam of Klippa is ruling and controlling of the Adam of Kedusha, but really it's for his own detriment, because through the tshuva, and the person is going to extract the sparks that he brought down into there. So not only those sparks will be extracted, but even sparks that were there prior and without the person's Aveda. Now physically, he says, the tunic covers the entire trunk of the person, the body of the person, until the legs. The trunk of the body itself indicates, without the feet, that indicates the 6 midas, or even if it indicates all the 7 midas, it's the 7 midas, but like Moshe Malchus, not the way they are included. It comes down to the level of Malchus. We'll soon speak about this in a footnote over here on the next page, about how it includes, or 2 pages, that it includes the different levels that there is, either has more levels or less levels. But anyway, let's continue. The inyan of Michnasayim, then you have the trousers. That the purpose of the trousers is to cover the flesh of the place that shouldn't be uncovered. The idea behind it is to atone for the sin of immoral relationships. Is a parsha that's actually written after it speaks about the levushim and the different things having to do with Yom Kippur, but speaks about also the levushim of the Kohen. It speaks about all the prohibited relationships. Besfiris, what is that in Sfiris corresponding to? Besfiris HaMalchus, it's the sphere of Malchus, the Chinas Nukva, the level of the feminine. Knesset Yisrael, that's the level of the congregation, the collection of the Neshamas Yisrael, Shesham Negesh Yekdusha V'Tara, that over there in the level of Nekeva, there's an obligation, and it matters that there should be holiness and purity. There needs to be a special type of care and watchfulness. Since the nature of Malchus is that its legs descend into, all the way into, as it says, the rest of the pasuk Mavis, it goes down to death, meaning it deals with the worlds of Biyam. So therefore it's more susceptible to inyanim that are not in the world of Kedusha. So therefore we need to have this protection of the trousers or the mechnasayim. That's why the kisoinus, the tunic, reaches the entire body until the thighs. Because it corresponds to the emotional attributes. The trousers are from the loins until the thighs. Levar migufa. This is called in Kabbalah terminology outside of the body, top of page 190, the third page. Bechinas HaMalchus. It deals with the things that are outside of the trunk, outside of the body. This is also why the word michnasayim is also related to the word gathering, collecting. Shezeu inyan Sfiras HaMalchus. It's the Sfiras HaMalchus, which is called Knesset Yisrael, the gathering, the collecting of Yisrael. What is it collecting? It is gathering and collecting the revelations from above. That's why a lot of times the level of the spheres above, especially Tiferes, is called Yisrael Sava. Malchus is Knesset, it's Knesset Yisrael. It's collecting all little zamshachas that come from above, and that's the same idea of Michnasayim. And the pasuk says about all these four garments, second paragraph, Bigdei Kodesh Heim. They are garments of holiness. The intention in all these four garments, Tzorech Liyas Inyan HaKedusha, has to be the idea of sanctity and holiness. What is the idea of sanctity and holiness indicate? Inyan HaBittel, because Kodesh indicates the level of bittul. Because the idea of holiness comes from the sphere of Chachma. It is the beginning of all spheres, and it includes all the spheres. What does the sphere of Chachma correspond to? And what's that? The reishis of Kedusha. And in Torah, the level of spheres of Chachma is the Aseres Adibris, where Hashem said about the idea of Anochi Lo Yelcha, Shekoilim is called Aseres Adibris. That include all the Aseres Adibris, just like the Spheres HaChachma, he said, includes all the other spheres as well. Just like the Dibur of Anochi Lo Yelcha, including it all the Aseres Adibris, so too in the Asarim HaMoros, it's also the Maimer of Bereshis, is also including all the other Mamoros. That's why it says, you could have created the world with one Maimer, because Bereshis is that one Maimer that includes all the other ones. The Bereshis, Nami Maimer who Bereshis is also one of the Asar Mamoros, even though it doesn't say Vayomer. It says, if you count, it seems to say only 9 times Vayomer. Vayomer al Kimi Oyer, Vayomer al Kimi Rokia. So the Chazal to tell you that even though Bereshis, it doesn't begin with the word Vayomer, it's also one of the Asar Mamoros. Shehu HaMaimer Kloli the Chachma. It's the general Maimer of Chachma. So similar to what we said before about the Mitznefes, the head covering, that is brought down that it's Keser, brought down that it's Chachma, and we explained that's not a contradiction, it's the way Keser comes down into Chachma. In a similar vein, we're going to talk about over here, the Anoichi connection is not just the Chachma, but also the Keser. The Inyan, the Anoichi, Mashu B'chinas HaKeser, Nimshu B'Chachma. Anoichi is the level of Keser, the way it comes down to Chachma. Shalchein Afsha Anoichi B'Keser, though Anoichi is in the level of Keser, the speech of Anoichi is counted in the 10 utterances. That's what comes down in speech. From the Aseres Adibris, through coming down in speech and in the level of Chachma, in other words, the Dibur, I'm translating it correctly over here, not so much the speech, but the Dibur of the Aseres Adibris, the 10, whatever you want to call it. You want to call it commandments, call it commandments. So we're saying that the Dibur of Anoichi, that first mitzvah of the Aseres Adibris, is counted in the Aseres Adibris. What's the idea of that's being counted in Aseres Adibris? if you're saying that it's Anoichi is the level of Keser. Keser is higher than the 10. Why is it counted part of Aseres HaDibros? Because this is what the level of Keser is already coming down into one of the Diburim of the Aseres HaDibros, and through coming down into one of the Diburim of Aseres HaDibros, meaning through coming down to Chochmah, and Chochmah is a Dibur Klali, and Chochmah is a Sphira Klalis, through Keser, Anoichi of Keser, coming down into the Dibur of Chochmah, of the first of the Aseres HaDibros, it comes down into the rest of the Aseres HaDibros, just like from Chochmah comes down to the rest of the spheres. Now we're going to get into the idea which we started talking about initially at the beginning of the Maimer, which is the concept of Bad. The Indian, the idea behind this is Bad, that it's made from Bad, Yuvna Pia Gemara. That Bad, what does it mean? The meaning, the concept of Bad, Dover Oilam and Akarka Bad Bevad, something that goes up from the ground, the Bad Bevad. What does that Bad Bevad mean? Pirish Rashi, Shem, Pirish Rashi Sham, Kane Yechidi Mikol Garin. It is a single stalk for every seedling. The Ein Beis Kanim Oilim Megeza Echad. You do not have, in other words, from one planted seedling, you have just one stalk of the Bad come up. And two stalks do not come from one shoot. As opposed to all types of other things that sprout, for example, wheat and grains, from one chita, from one kernel of wheat, many stalks can come up from it. What does this symbolize? What does this indicate? It indicates that it's singular, alone. What is the idea of Ba'avodah? Habakkuk came along and he established and set all the Torah mitzvahs on one thing. What does Habakkuk say? Tzaddik will live by his emunah, meaning the singular idea of Torah mitzvahs that he says is that all the levels needs to be based on emunah. So that's what it means, that all of these four things are bad. This is why all the four garments, Shem Keneged Kol Adargas, that they correspond to all the four levels that we enumerated over here, Chochmah, Bina, Midas, and Malchus, that all these four things, Srichem Liya is Mibad. And that's why it says by each one the word Bad, like we mentioned at the beginning of the Maimer. Hainu, the Kol Adargas, Srichem Liya is Miyusodas, all the levels have to be based on the idea of belief. By the Yidden there is the level. There's many levels. And in general, the Jewish people are divided in the chlokim from those that serve Hashem with their neshama and those that serve Hashem with their body. In other words, they're involved more in, one is involved more in the spiritual and doesn't have to deal so much with his body and doesn't have to counteract and deal with how low his body is, etc. And others, they have to deal with something else. They have to deal with refining their body and elevating the body. More specifically, the Jewish people are divided over the 10 levels over heads, and there's shvatim until there's those that are wood choppers and water carriers. These are the 10 different levels of the Yidden. And why are these 10 different levels? They correspond to the 10 spheres. That we know the 10 spheres correspond also to the 4 letters of the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei Shezeu Inyan Hadal Partzufim, the Chachma, Bina, Midas, and Malchus. That in general, the 4 letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei correspond to the 4 faces, like Yud is a Chachma, and Hey is Bina, and Vav is the 6 Midas, and the Hey Achroin is Malchus. Shekineged Adal Bigdei Kuna, and all these correspond to the 4 garments of the kahuna. That's the idea of the 4 times that it says bad. It corresponds to the 4 letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which corresponds to the 10 spheres. So that indicates all the different divisions. Hainu, this means, should be Yisrael, Yeshne Gamkin, in Yeradal, Partzufim, Vabig De Kunda. By the Yidden in general, there's all the 4 different faces, levels of Yud Kei Vav Kei, amongst the whole Klal Yisrael, because there's 10 types of Yidden, which fall into the category of the 4. And there's these 4 Big De Kuna, and each one of these divisions, regardless if you're a sheikhem or you're a choyte v'tzecha, yeshna inyan amunah. There's a level of belief, b'chol madrega lefi inyan, and every level according to what it's about. There's the belief connected with that level. And that's why it says bad by each and every one of the big dekuna, because each one of the avodas has their own level of belief based on their level, connected with their level. 2 lines in the bottom of Bir Inyan, who the explanation of this matter is, though the idea of belief is a point that's beyond the vision, still in all, it's not the same. The belief that is by a person that has an intellect, top of 191, to the belief of someone that's more of an emotional type of person. Baal Seichel Gufa, and by a intellectual person himself, it will depend his emunah, what type of emunah it will be. If his type of intellectual prowess is when the ideas are by him in a way of a point, which is chachma, or his intellectual faculties is more about explanation, extrapolation, widening, broadening, like the level of bina, and so to further. The same thing, the idea of emunah by a person that's more of an emotional rather than an intellectual person. It's not the same how it's by ordinary people, which are the level of the legs. That's different than the way by the emotional people. Like we explained in the previous Maimer in that year in Tafshel Lamed Vav ala Kosov, on the pasuk Vayish Moshe Honor Moed Kol Ad Mashapnei Adama, that Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble person from all people that was on the face on the earth. Moshe Rabbeinu is spoiled. Moshe Rabbeinu got excited about the simple trust and faith and belief of the generation of the heels of Mashiach. Until it even affected him that he was greatly humbled by the generation before Mashiach's times. Though what's Moshe Rabbeinu's job? He was a shepherd that fed the Jewish people emunah. Moshe Rabbeinu emesra, and Moshe Rabbeinu saw the truth, meaning that when he had emunah, it was a true emunah. So if he had already the truest form of emunah, so what would get him so excited? Why would he become so excited over the belief and faith of the generation of the heels of Mashiach? El Shazel Kanal. This is rather like we mentioned before. It's not the same, the belief and faith. That's by Moshe Rabbeinu to the belief that's the level of the legs, the generation of the heels of Mashiach. That's why they're called heels, because of this particular level, this lowest, most level of the legs. Therefore, though it says, Eitzel Pesi Yamin L'chol Dover, then Moshe Rabbeinu, a fool will believe everything. It's going on Moshe Rabbeinu. So therefore, he had the level of emunah seemingly like an ordinary person. He was called a fool. So he says, no, it's not that way. It's still a level of belief and faith the way it's in the level of chachma. Because Moshe Rabbeinu asked questions. That's why he asked, why did you do so terrible at the end of Parshas Shmos? And he was answered to by Hashem, Chaval da Avdin Chulum. that it's a pity for those that have been lost, in other words, before you, that didn't question. So his emunah was like combined with chachma. Because from the perspective of wisdom, the chachma of kedusha, there has to be specifically understanding and comprehension. That's why the Torah records the question of Moshe, why did you do this bad? Moshe, from the perspective of Moshe, Chachma de Kedusha, the level of wisdom of Kedusha, Tzarich Lishel Chulu, one needs to ask, one must ask. So, yes, he had Emunah, but Emunah like in a level of Chachma. We'll stop over here.